There are very few things more humiliating than failing to pull one over on your audience when you obviously so clearly desperately are trying to do exactly that. Better not to prank at all than to try and prank and obviously fail. I get that exact vibe when it comes to twist villains. Twist villains are the coolest concept on paper, but they are practically so hard to actually create. When I see a twist villain coming in the story, it literally destroys the entire story for me. It failed at its one job. You had one job! I recently watched Nimona on Netflix, and literally in the first like 10 minutes, I was like, there is no way that the old white lady that believes in purity is not the villain at the end. And what? She was somehow? Nani? That said, as someone that's been analyzing media for a very long time, and someone that loves media, especially when it comes to animation, actually pulling one over on me, getting me to fall for a twist villain, that's really difficult. And in superhero movies, it's even more difficult. I feel like it's unfortunate because superheroes have almost become a genre of their own at this point, and 90% of them have some kind of twist villain, and every single twist villain turns out to be the most obvious shit in the world. Twists are really, really hard to do. In my opinion, the best twist villain of all time, Sosuke Aizen, hands down, absolute god among men. Bleach, if you did one thing right, it was Aizen. That man can get it. But Aizen aside, making twist villains is really, really tough, is what I'm trying to say. And when they fail badly. This was all a precursor to the absolute main course, the Big Chungus. I'm talking about a twist villain that has all the beauty and glory of being a twist villain, surprising you, and also not at all giving away the sauce before the sauce was meant to be eaten. The sauce is 177013, if you know, you know. I'm talking about Omni Man. Omni Man's twist is literally a have your cake and eat it too twist. I don't think anyone saw the actual twist coming at the end of episode 1 of Invincible. Spoilers, if you haven't seen Invincible, bro, you have to watch Invincible. What is wrong with you? What are you doing here if you haven't watched Invincible? Omni Man is essentially the Superman of this verse. Man's incredibly strong, he's awesome, he's cool, he's the head of the equivalent of the Justice League in this verse, and at the very end of episode 1, he calls a gathering of all the Justice League of this verse. They all gather and they're all cool in their own way, you know, they all have their powers, but bro, this man's, he's fucking Superman, and he annihilates every single one of them. Much like the imposter in a game of Amogus, this man out here outbrains and annihilates every other member of the group. Now, you don't know his motive, you don't know his backstory, you don't know where he's from or why he's doing what he does, but suddenly he goes from the really wholesome, nice dude, the dad of the main character, the wholesome one, the guy that upon first glance is just essentially Superman reskinned, and suddenly he turns everything you thought you knew about the Superman trope on its head. He gathers the Justice League, and then in the most brutal and disgusting way, manages to disembowel, obliterate, and murder every single one of them. This man creates a massacre. Yes, he gets a little hurt on the way, you know, he goes up against the entire Justice League at the same time, and he's able to definitely pull off the story that someone attacked them, killed the Justice League, and left him wounded, and who's gonna doubt Superman? Who's gonna doubt a man strong enough to wipe out their entire planet and civilization? Well, much like every beloved and very famous, incredibly rich person that looks at the lower class like peons, so does he. Omni Man is a slightly less narcissistic, slightly more genocidal Homelander, if you could even imagine it. But the reason why he's such a good twist is because it's not like we marinate in the story long enough for us to totally see the twist coming that Omni Man's a bad guy. At the end of the very first episode, it is completely revealed to us that Omni Man's the bad guy in the most shocking and gory conclusion ever. No one expected to be introduced to an entire cast of an entire Justice League only for them to get brutalized in 4 seconds flat by the absolute giga threat that is Omni Man. The end of that first episode of Invincible literally scarred me. I remember exactly where I was and how I felt while I was watching Omni Man do this horrible stuff. I was lucky enough not to get spoiled by this. At this point, if you haven't seen Invincible, I'm sure you have been spoiled by this by everyone on the internet just because everyone refers to Omni Man as a villain. But I think so many people forget that he is the ultimate and perfect twist villain. He is a twist that you did not see coming in the very first episode, and you were literally able to have your cake and eat it too, and goddamn does Omni Man have a juicy cake. But this way, you get to absolutely love and adore this show and this twist exactly for what it is. You are able to marinate in exactly how evil he is because you already know he's a villain. The twist surprised you in episode 1, and when the twist hits the entire world in episode 12, now you learn about his motives. You get to witness it through the eyes, the shock and horror of the people around him that realize that their idol, the person that they loved, the main character's own father, was actually the source of all evil in this world, wanting to eradicate the entire human race. It's so difficult to write a twist villain that A, surprises you, and B, lets you actually marinate in it, let alone give you the live reaction of all the other people realizing he's actually a villain. And this is something I absolutely adore. Most villain twists try very hard to surprise both you, the viewer, and the main character, the guy whose perspective you're basically watching this story unfold through his eyes. They try their best to surprise both of y'all at the same time. But I feel like Invincible really knows exactly how to create an absolute menace. It's so that you see how twisted and horrible and cruel he is without understanding his motives, with nothing but curiosity as to what he's gonna do and when the shoe is gonna drop. And he's not there simply being a nice guy, being all cock and no cum. No, this dude out here, you know that at some point in the story he is going to pee in your mouth and make you gargle it. But honestly, it's somehow even more terrifying to know that this dude is capable of all these atrocities, to know he's this evil, to not know why he did what he did do, and to just watch him live a normal life. To watch him be loved and appreciated by everyone around him when you know in actuality this man is the deepest and darkest scum of society. I love subverting the superhero trope. It's my favorite thing because superheroes, especially with how they're being churned out by the megacorps today, just being thrown on your screen and watching all of them just basically be the same cookie cutter mold, the same script, just reskinned to suit different superheroes, overcoming the same issues, fighting the same concept of villain that's there to control the multiverse or destroy the universe or to fight the world or be some mega super threat that only the superhero is able to overcome with his gimmick. Seeing the same reskin of the same story told a million times where the moral of the story is always basic throw up of don't be afraid to be yourself, or don't be afraid to believe in yourself, or your friends are there for you, but also you need to be there for yourself. Yeah, the whole yourself shit really doesn't get old, does it? And it's almost like they're basically making these shows for kids to sell toys and to sell movie tickets, where they're just putting bright colors on the screen of guys fighting and shooting lasers at each other with iconic superhero names. I feel like this goes through the heads of a lot of people a lot of times. They're like, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. The last 40 superhero movies all have the same plot, so why can't one more have the same plot? Why can't every twist villain be incredibly obvious that they're gonna end up being the villain? What, you think we're gonna try to write a surprising story here? Bro, it's the same story that we just made a year ago! So when I see some sort of superhero subversion, like you see in The Boys and like you see in Invincible, I am always just jittering with excitement. I love how Invincible makes it a much, much darker story, but also, specifically, when it comes to a villain like Omni Man, I love how he is introduced as the twist villain right off the bat, and it's up to the main character to catch up to you, the viewer, and figure that out. Every superhero story tries so hard to be some kind of wacky self-insert story to the sake of you are always exactly as clued in as the main character. Watching Doctor Strange explain shit to Peter Parker and also the viewers at the same time, wow, what a coincidence, it's so crazy, really got old. And I feel like because of that, no one is willing to actually clue the audience into what twists are actually happening in the world. But Invincible does. It clues the audience in on the twists by bamboozling them completely. It will fool you. And because it fools you, you get to watch a whole story of Omni Man, who you know is evil because he already surprised you, and do evil stuff behind the scenes, building him up as like an actual and genuine super threat at the end of the story. By the time the final episode came and it was Mark versus Omni Man, your asshole was so clenched. You got to experience a fight between someone who was just betrayed by his own father, and you get to witness all of those emotions at the same time, while also you were able to watch a supervillain that you saw be built up for 12 episodes in that very same fight. It's a phenomenon that I feel like we have not really seen, and Invincible managed to absolutely pull off a masterpiece of a climax of the series, as well as a masterpiece of a twist villain at the very, very beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't watched Invincible, I spoiled it all for you. I definitely ruined part of your enjoyment of the show, but quite frankly, it's your own fault for not watching it until now. I feel no guilt at all in doing any of that. I'm sorry, but zero guilt. I'm just realizing I have in my script, I'm sorry, I have no guilt, which sorry literally means guilt. But hey, lying in an apology, that's YouTubing 101. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me be in a position where I could just talk about shit that I like, and also shit on things that I don't like. That's the mantra. mantra. Toxic to toxic people and wholesome to wholesome ones. I live and breathe that mantra. That is, until I pull a twist and try to scam my entire audience with some crazy AI, NFT, crypto shit. Probably will never happen, but like if they offer me $100 million, like listen, I'm gonna be upfront with you guys. $100 million is a lot of money. God, I love a good twist.